Welcome back to the Federal Retirement Show. I'm your host, Val Majewski with American Benefits Exchange. As always, appreciate you taking that time out of your schedule to join us, to view our content. It is for you, the federal employee that's looking for accurate information when it comes to your benefits and retirement situations. We have a whole library of content for you. So if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Thank you to whoever pointed you in our direction, or thank you for finding us. We've got now 153 episodes, all information geared towards federal employees, trying to help you navigate your way through your career so you can retire how you want, when you want, with the lifestyle that you want. And our conversations and our content generally come from situations I encounter when talking to other federal employees just like you. And that leads us to today's conversation, which is no different. We're talking about part-time employment with the government. And if you're a part-time employee, what does that mean? It just means you're not working a full 40-hour-a-week schedule. There's varying levels of part-time, but if you've got part-time during your career, how does that affect you when you get to retirement? And just had a recent conversation with a federal employee, and we're going through and trying to certify their employment status or their employment record for their retirement application. And you want to make sure you understand how part-time employment is going to affect you down the road when it is time to retire. So again, this federal employee, as part of their retirement application, you'll get there when you get there, right? But as you're filling that out, your agency will certify your employment record, and that talks about how much years or how many years of service you have that are going to be counted towards your retirement calculation, ultimately determining what your pension is going to be. Now, if you want to know what the pension calculation looks like and how to do it, there's plenty of other episodes where we've talked about calculating your pension as a FERS employee, or if you happen to be CSRS, a CSRS employee. But we're talking here again about how does part-time employment affect you when you get to retirement. So let's dive into today's content and learn a little bit more. So when we talk about part-time employment, there's a number of things that we're going to cover today. And it said this is anything less than full-time, which is 40 hours a week. Okay. So when you have that part of your status, or as part of your status during any part of your career, and it could have been a temporary thing, it could have been for an extended period of time, how is that going to affect you? Now, the first bullet point is time still counts. We'll talk about this in a second. We got to go over what the proration factor is. We'll talk about high 3, your survivor benefits. Then we'll also discuss the FERS supplement. And all of these things are affected by your part-time work. So when it says time still counts, what does that mean? The time that you spend as a part-time employee still counts as full-time for calculation purposes. So let's say you worked part-time for 1 year and you worked 20-hour weeks. So you're at 50% time. And you worked, let's say you worked 2 years part-time. It's not like you just got credited 1 year of service because you're at 50% for a 2-year period. You still got 2 years of service time when it comes to retirement eligibility. So what I mean by time still counts, that time you spent as part-time counts as full credit for retirement eligibility purposes. It's not like they're going to say, hey, you worked 20 years, but 2 of those were at 50%, so we're only going to credit you 19. No, that's where the next thing will come in when we talk about the proration factor. But the time still counts that you're working part-time. It counts as full-time for eligibility purposes, right? For what you're going to get credited when it comes to eligibility purposes. Speaking of that proration factor, now this is where they're going to do the calculation, okay, to determine what the factor is that is going to be added to the end after your pension is calculated. So here's how they would do this, right? Let's say they calculate your pension as if you were full-time the entire time. Right? We'll get into high 3 in a second, but high 3 times the factor of 1 or 1.1% times your years of service, they get your annual pension amount, initial. Then they're going to look at what is this proration factor? It's the number of hours that you work total, right? So take the number of hours you work total. If it were 20 years, 30 years, what have you, the number of hours that you worked total over your career, and divide that by the number of total hours that you could have worked if you were full-time the entire time. Now, if you're full-time the entire time, then that factor ends up being 1, right? The amount of hours you worked, boom, is the same as the maximum hours because you were full-time the entire time. But if you had a portion of part-time work in there, then you're not going to have the maximum hours based on your years of service. So the proration factor is hours worked divided by the total hours if you were full-time the entire career. That's your proration factor. So once they calculate your pension, they're going to multiply that by the proration factor, and that's going to get your actual amount of what you're going to get paid. High three. So if you work part-time in this whole thing, we mentioned high three is part of that retirement calculation. High three is still going to count. So we had this come up where, let's say you make 100,000. Okay. We talked about that 2-year period right there where you worked part-time. So you made your 100,000 was your annual pay. Because you only worked part-time though, you only made 50,000 for that year. So your annual salary is 100. That was assuming full pay, right? Full-time pay. But let's say you only worked 50% of the time. So you only actually earned 50,000 or 50% of that because you worked at 50% capacity, 20 hours a week. Your high three is still going to count at that 100,000 level, or 100,000 is still going to count towards your high three. So all of this levels out in the end when they add that proration factor. But time, as I mentioned earlier, still counts for eligibility. And the high three based on the annual salary will still count totally towards your high three calculation. Now, because your final annual salary gets affected by the proration factor, then your survivor benefits will also get affected by it. So your survivor will still, your surviving spouse, if you choose to elect, let's say your FERS, either the 50% or the 25% option, your surviving spouse will get 50% or 25% of the final amount after the proration factor. Okay, so they're not going to get 50% of the full amount. It's got to be after the proration factor is applied. They'll get 50 or 25% of that. And the FERS Supplement, if you go back and view our content on the FERS Supplement, you can see the FERS Supplement is based on two things: your age 62 Social Security benefit and the number of years you work in the FERS service. So when they add that proration factor at the end, I said all of your years count towards full-time credit when it comes to eligibility for retirement. But when the FERS Supplement comes in, they're going to use that proration factor for your years to determine what your final amount's going to be for the FERS Supplement. So you don't get full credit for the FERS Supplement. It's going to still be affected by the proration factor, which will lower your FERS Supplement amount. So pretty awesome stuff here when it comes to part-time work and part-time employment, how it affects your retirement. So that was a question we got asked. Again, it was a federal employee that was trying to certify their work record, their service record with their agency so they can file it in for their retirement application. Good news is, like I said, all that time counts. The high three still calculated the highest amount. It's not lowered for the proration factor. The high three still counts, but that proration factor, as I mentioned earlier, will affect the final when it comes to the pension calculation, the survivor benefits, and the FERS Supplement. So hopefully you found this information helpful. If you've had some part-time work during your career and you haven't been full-time 100% of the time, this is how this is going to affect you. If you have further questions, please reach out to us. You can go to our website, federalretirementshow.com, fill out the form. One of our experts across the country, if it's not me personally, will be reaching out to you to discuss your benefits, answer your question. We can produce some reports for you to let you know exactly where you stand and how you're trending as you get closer and closer to retirement. Again, I hope you found today's content helpful. If you have suggestions on future episodes, go to that website again, federalretirementshow.com, fill out the form. Let us know what it is we can talk about in the future, what will be helpful for you and the people that you work with. Again, my name is Val Majewski with American Benefits Exchange. You've been watching the Federal Retirement Show, and I look forward to seeing you on a future episode.